Jamestown was a peaceful community until Butch Lord showed up.
All right.
You're listening to the Butch Lord Radio Roadshow. Presented by Bud Light. The Butch Lord Radio Roadshow is the world's first touring radio show. We tour nationally doing live comedy unique to the cities that we tour in. We do live interviews unique to the cities that we tour in. It's the touring radio show, the world's first, the Butch Lord Radio Roadshow.
This guy has been touring all across the country, and I love him. I know you will, too. Please give a warm welcome to Butch Lord!
Ozzy.
Oh, man.
Ooh, how about you? Episode 420 of the Butch Lord Radio Roadshow.
It's about time.
So dubbed. So dubbed the episode 420 because we actually have, we're turning away just a tad from the entertainment. Actually, there's some entertainment here.
Well, you know, we're just not doing the live setting tonight.
We're not doing the live setting tonight, and actually, usually we bring you entertainers and artists and stuff, but we're going to the, we're turning a page here on the Butch Lord Radio Roadshow, and we are bringing an activist on.
Yes.
Aha.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, two activists.
This is our politically incorrect episode.
We are going to be the Daily Show of radio.
It's not Alex Jones. But
No. Somewhere between the Daily Show and Alex Jones right here tonight. We are going to, because there's some pretty big stories in the news, and I'm sure you guys have heard of them. First of all, we're going to start with what prompted us to get a hold of our first guest tonight, and that is the Mark Emery story.
Yeah.
Now,
Some of our friends have been affected, personally, people that we know that are in this line of work.
Absolutely. Because if you don't know, Mark Emery they call him the Prince of Pot in Canada, and he was actually, all he had was a dang seed business. He sold seeds worldwide, and because he sold them also to clients here in the United States, finally the DEA, after 10 years of wasting time and money, trying different ways of catching this guy, they ended up working a deal where they extradited him down. He's now doing 5 years in a federal pen.
It was just pinning him up against the wall because he was making a business selling seeds. It's like, brings up the question you asked last week of like
the right to life, right? When is a seed a plant? I don't think so, man.
Yeah, well, what you got to remember is that here's a guy that built a huge multi-million-dollar company from selling pot seeds. But he put that money back into a media company, a catalog that he had. He was big into philanthropy and threw his money around to different charities and different causes, and that's why they called him the Prince, is because he was such a nice guy. He's very involved in the government in Canada, and the Canadian government supports him wholeheartedly. They're trying to get him back there right now. So there's a movement to try to at least send him back to Canada if he's going to do that time. Let him do it up there.
And the other thing with that along that same lines was of what he did with his money that really sparked their interest and got them interested in prosecuting him in the first place is a lot of his profits went to fund organizations that were out to change the laws.
Right.
The lobbyists, like the folks at NORML, the National Organization to Reform Marijuana Laws, which has been around since the 70s.
Right.
And in fact, that's who we went straight to. We went straight to one of the guys on the front line since the beginning, actually. We called up and we actually got a hold of Keith Straub, who was the original founder of NORML. He left after Georgetown University Law School and was working with Ralph Nader and doing activism as far as autos and things like that and consumer products, but turned his attention to something a little dearer to his heart, which is marijuana.
And lungs are 3 inches over.
A little nearer. It was nearer his heart. And so, he actually got involved in activism to change marijuana laws and realized way back then how ridiculous they were. And it's taken a long time, but he has brought this fight for a long ways. Now, he has moved on since creating that organization and has several times served as the executive director, most recently in 2004. But he has also done other things, like you said, led the National Criminal Defense Attorneys Organization for
Yep.
criminal defense attorneys. So he's a really active cat, and he loves these types of things, and he's been at the front of this fight. And we have him here in studio today. We're going to go straight to the interview with, there he is, the founder of Normal, right here on the Butch Lord Radio Roadshow, Keith Straub.
Hello, Keith here.
Hey, Keith, it's Butch Lord from the Butch Lord Radio Roadshow.
Yes, sir.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing fine. Thanks for calling. What can I do for
we
you?
wanted to get a couple of stories from you because there's a couple of huge stories in the news. Starting with, well, we want to start with the story there with Mark Emery and what happened there.
Sure. Well, are you ready, I presume?
Yes, sir. We're up and running already, sir.
Okay. Mark is an old friend. I've met with him a couple of times before he was imprisoned. And he was quite an impressive entrepreneur. He ran a sort of Amsterdam-style coffee shop. He had a broadcast studio. And most importantly, and certainly most of interest to our government, he was one of several marijuana seed sellers in Canada who sold their goods throughout the world, but predominantly to the American market. Mark was one of those people who had access to connoisseur marijuana seeds, the kind of seeds that have driven the Grow America market here for some time, where we now have the highest quality marijuana of any place in the world. It's better than you get in Europe, and it's far better than you get in Mexico and many other countries that used to be known for their marijuana. Well, for those of us who smoke marijuana, that's a good thing, and we have Mark and other allies of his to thank for that. The Canadian government did not apparently think it was a terribly serious offense because although they've arrested him on a few occasions, they never kept him in jail more than a few days, and certainly did not choose to give him a serious prison sentence. But finally, after several years of effort on the part of our own DEA, they did manage to extradite Mark, get him in the United States, and charge him with serious felonies where he could have gone to jail for, I think he could probably go into life if they wanted to stack the charges.
Wow.
He ended up copping a plea to a maximum of 5 years. I'm sure that was difficult for Mark to accept, but I think his lawyers advised him wisely. The 5 years, the expectation is he will serve a year or so in the States and then probably be returned to Canada to serve out the balance of his prison sentence. So Mark's a young enough man. He'll survive this, and he'll get back home to his wife, and I suspect he'll continue to be a popular hero in Canada and in the United States. But clearly, this is a tough time for him.
But is this, now I've seen that they're going to do some protest rallies kind of, or support Mark rallies in a bunch of cities. It said in a website like over 70 cities throughout U.S. and Canada, and we understood that maybe some of your Normal chapters were involved in some of those rallies.
Oh, without question. We have a popular website that we frequently feature calls to action on Mark's behalf. We have something like 140 various level Normal chapters around the country, and many of those are involved in the efforts to publicize his case and call for relief. Honestly, I don't think any of us anticipate that we're going to be successful, in the sense that we don't expect the federal government's suddenly going to fold and say we made a mistake and we're going to send Mark home. But I still think it's terribly important for two reasons. One is when you're on the inside. I'm a criminal defense lawyer, and I've spent enough time visiting clients on the inside of prisons to know that it can get pretty lonely and isolated when you're in there. And knowing that there are hundreds and maybe even thousands of groups around the country who are protesting on your behalf could be a real emotional boost while Mark is serving that time. But more importantly, we don't want the government, either in Canada or here, to lose sight of the fact that they truly are out of step with the attitudes of the public. We know in this country, for example, that roughly 80% of the public now say they support the use of medical marijuana if a doctor recommends it, and as high as 76% say we should stop arresting marijuana smokers, that it's none of the government's business. Well, if it's okay to smoke marijuana, then why is it so serious to sell marijuana seeds? After all, if somebody didn't provide the seeds and somebody didn't grow the marijuana, those of us who smoke it wouldn't have anything to smoke. So obviously we're going through a difficult transition phase in this country. I think everybody realizes that we're moving steadily towards legal marijuana. That by that I mean a tax and regulate system where smokers are going to be allowed to buy their marijuana in a safe and secure environment, much like alcohol drinkers buy their alcohol. And in fact, it's on the ballot in California this November. California may well be the first state to re-legalize marijuana. And if they do, as goes California, so goes the nation. It won't be long before many other states will follow suit. So we want to make sure that our government understands that they're on the losing side of this argument. They still have a lot of power. They just released the arrest data from last year, and there were 850,000 Americans arrested last year on marijuana charges. 89% were 89% of those arrests were arrested for personal use, just people like me and my friends who, when we relax in the evening, prefer to smoke a marijuana cigarette rather than drink alcohol. Marijuana arrests now comprise 52% of all drug arrests in the country. So it's true the government still has a lot of power, and they're not going to give up easily, and unfortunately there are going to be a lot of other lives and careers unfairly ruined as we work our way through prohibition and finally get to where citizens have their rights back again. But we are winning it. We have 14 states in the District of Columbia that have now legalized medical use. We had 5 states this year that had full legalization bills introduced in the legislature. That was California, Washington, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and there's one other one there I'm missing, Massachusetts. So the number of states that consider full legalization is only going to continue to increase because, among other reasons, they need the tax revenue. And for example, in California, it was estimated by the state that if this initiative passes in California, they will raise approximately $1.4 billion, not million, billion, the very first year. So a lot of states are going to learn what they did with gambling. They can get over their silly morality about marijuana smoking when they realize how much money they can make from a legally regulated market.
Yeah, that's what I've always said is just, please, why don't you just tax us? Just get it over with. Just tax us.
You know, we're probably the only constituency in the country that has been raising our hands for 30 or 40 years saying, please tax us.
That's absolutely right, you know. And I'll tell you, that was the other reason that we wanted to call, because that was the other big story, is that initiative in California, and we were calling about that. Obviously, you guys are behind that, but I think it's more important to back up and say that even these rallies like these ones to support Mark Emery and to bring the awareness and to remind people that there's a lot of people out there same-minded thinking the same thing. It's time now.
Look what they did to Tommy.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, a lot of those people are only now beginning to feel comfortable enough politically to let us know they support us. You know, for a long time, if you spoke out and said you favored legalized marijuana, you were liable to lose your job. You know, you were considered some kind of a radical. And certainly if you acknowledged your own personal use, you were likely to be drug tested. And if you tested positive, you'd probably be fired.
Absolutely.
Well, there's still too many people who that's happening to, but clearly more and more Americans are coming around to our point of view, and it truly is only a matter of time. I would bet that within 3 years we have at least one state that has legalized marijuana, because frankly, if California doesn't do it this year, I think they will. But if they don't, if they pass that initiative, it's probably going to be only by a few points, and if they lose it, it's only going to be by a few points. But frankly, if they lose it this year, it'll be back on the ballot in 2012, and it'll sure as hell pass.
That's what I'm talking about. And, you know, that's the part about keeping the awareness out there and doing these rallies like we were talking about before. And we wanted to see about who we contact to get involved in local rallies. How do we get a hold of it? Because we're going to be we're on the road. We travel. And we're going to actually be in Wichita, Kansas on the 18th, which is the day of those rallies. And then we saw then that there was one in Kansas City that we could go up to that we saw was up there in Swoop Park. But where else do we find the information for that?
Well, frankly, I don't have it right on the tip of my tongue, but I'm positive there's a Mark Emery website because I've been up there before. And his wife, Jody Emery,
Yeah, that'd be cannabis.
have the contact information.
Cannabisculture.com, I believe.